President reiterates commitment to uphold national security on the sidelines of climate summit in Paris.
United Nations Conference on Climate Change 2015 commences in Paris, France.
Doctors gear up to strike in opposition to curtailing of privileges through the 2016 budget.
Rupee hits record low against the US dollar.
The 500 rupee fertilizer subsidy will not be slashed. An assurance from Minister Sajith Premadasa.
Another month has passed and 2016 is drawing closer by the second. How will you look back at the year 2015? Hello, good evening and welcome. This is Primetime News. Good evening, Jitendra.
Good evening, Nadeem. And good evening to all our viewers from here at home and across the globe. Let's start with a look at the top story for tonight.
The United Nations Conference on Climate Change, Paris 2015, commenced in Paris, France, with the participation of several heads of state today.
President Maithripala Sirisena was also among the top world leaders to attend the summit.
More than 150 world leaders have converged to launch the two-week talks known as COP21. Among the many world leaders to attend the summit were Prince Charles, US President Barack Obama, British Prime Minister David Cameron, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Chinese President Xi Jinping. The United Nations-sponsored climate conference was officially declared open by Peruvian Environment Minister Manuel Pulgo Verdaes as France's Laurent Fabius was officially elected president of the COP21.
Mr. Laurent Fabius, elected president of the 21st session of the Conference of the Paris.
Essentially, what is at stake with this climate conference is peace. And yet, hope has emerged during preparations for COP21. The international community in September provided itself with a complete agenda through the Sustainable Development Goals, which were adopted during the United Nations General Assembly. And Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, I congratulate you on that. 190 states, that is almost all the planet's countries, have put forward action plans to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and to adapt to climate change. And all actors of the global society, local governments, business, investors, citizens, all have come on board for the climate.
The national climate plans submitted by more than 180 countries as of today cover close to 100% of global emissions. This is a very good start, but we need to go much faster, much further if we are to limit the global temperature rise below 2 degrees Celsius. The science has made it plainly clear. Even a 2 degrees Celsius rise will have serious consequences for food and water security, economic stability, and international peace and security. That is why we need a universal, meaningful, and robust agreement here in Paris.
Occurrences of natural disaster due to extreme weather conditions such as droughts, floods and landslide frequently deprive lives and livelihoods of the people in Sri Lanka. We consider that transfer of technology to developing countries will ensure that people will be able to address the need of adaptation and nationally suitable mitigation actions. On the domestic front, I am glad to declare that Sri Lanka has launched several climate-smart initiatives.
Speaking at the summit, US President Barack Obama and Chinese President Xi Jinping pledged to work together for a climate change agreement.
There's two largest economies in the world and the two largest carbon emitters. We have both determined that it is our responsibility to take action, and I think once again show the world that there's far more that the United States and China have in common than separates us, and that when we work together, good things happen.
A total of 25,000 official delegates hope to secure a legally binding accord for every country to cut carbon emissions. Most of the discussions are expected to centre on an agreement to limit global warming to 2 degrees Celsius. Assessments of more than 180 national plans that have been submitted by countries suggest that if they were implemented, the world would see a rise of nearer to 3 degrees Celsius. Security has been ramped up in Le Bourget, the venue of the monumental United Nations climate change talk. There was also a few minor demonstrations outside the conference centre as protesters descended against the use of fossil fuel. The protests come after hundreds of thousands of people from Australia to Paraguay joined the biggest day of climate change activism in history yesterday, telling world leaders there was quote-unquote no planet B in the fight against global warming.
The purpose of this climate summit is to place action before words. Heads of state from across the world will present their views and exchange ideas here. Sri Lanka's President Maithripala Sirisena also addressed the summit today. He pointed out that everyone has been vested with the responsibility to take action and conserve the environment instead of simply talking about it.
Meanwhile, President Maithripala Sirisena met with the Sri Lankan community in France yesterday.
I must very clearly state that I, as the Minister of Defence and as the custodian of the Tri-Forces, have a clear understanding, ache and keenness on the country, its national security and future more than anyone of those who criticise me. I would never compromise the national security of the country under any circumstance. Our critics can criticise all they want, but the sole responsibility of that matter lies in our hands, and we are doing whatever it takes to safeguard it. The main issue we had was that we did not have international assistance, but now as a government, we have succeeded in winning the support of the international community, and my constant commitment to gain more international support is with the intention of strengthening our national security and our security forces. I assure you that, like the commitment I made on the 8th of January, I will dedicate my life to build your motherland, Sri Lanka, as a superior and glorious nation.
The Government Medical Officers Association has announced that they will take trade union action against the curtailing of doctors' privileges via the 2016 budget. At a media briefing held today, the GMOA added that 15 trade unions have pledged support to such action.
The GMOA has expressed its displeasure with several proposals and shortcomings in the 2016 budget, including the disregarding of adding 10,000 rupees to basic salaries, the annulling of vehicle permits and certain tax revisions. The main factor is the deprivation of privileges, namely the duty concession. The second factor is the failure to revise basic salaries. This government cannot fail to increase the basic salaries of government employees by citing increased pension payments as an excuse. We are not suddenly raising this issue. As professionals, we cannot stand by and watch as they take away concessions that were given to public sector employees by the September 2014 budget. 15 trade unions have joined together. The GMOA, the Sri Lanka Administrative Officers Association, the Ayurvedic Officers Association, the State Engineers Association, the Sri Lanka Planning Service Association, the Veterinarians Association, the Education Administrative Service Association and others. They have all joined us and we are ready to commence island-wide trade union action at any moment. I have with me a letter that I addressed to the Minister of Health on the 26th of November. We have given notice. I wrote a letter to the Finance Minister on the same day. While we have communicated this to them, we are yet to receive a response. We have informed everyone that needs to be informed, not once but twice. Thereby we have decided to take trade union action as a final resort. Issuing a communique in response to the GMO's decision, the Ministry of Health noted that the proper way to resolve problems is through discussions and not strikes. The communique reads further that the GMOA has not had any discussion with the Health Minister as yet with regard to the annulling of duty-free vehicle permits or the adding of 10,000 rupees to basic salaries. Yes, we have annulled the permits. This annulment does not apply only to government employees. We have annulled permits for MPs too. But we will not let government employees be deprived of this advantage. We will give them a cash allowance to purchase a vehicle. We are annulling the permits because there is no transparency in that system.
The opposition is accusing the government of failing to maintain the rupee's stability against the dollar. The State Minister of Finance, however, points out that corrective measures were taken by the new government with regard to the value of the rupee, which was manipulated in the recent past.
The rupee hit a record low against the dollar today, with the selling price of a dollar standing at 145 rupees according to rates published by the central bank today. The selling price of the dollar at the beginning of the year was 133 rupees and it has depreciated by more than 8% since. The main cause for the drastic depreciation of the rupee over the past 2 to 3 months has been cited as a cessation of the manipulation by the central bank in the form of releasing dollars to the foreign exchange markets.
In January, our UPFA government had foreign reserves amounting to $8.3 billion. This was the state when we entrusted it to them. However, within 10 to 11 months, they have reduced our foreign reserves to 6.2 billion. This 6.2 billion includes 1.7 billion which was given by India. So the actual reserves amount to only 4 billion. Since the trade deficit is also widening on a daily basis along with this crisis, the situation is being aggravated. Although they sold dollars to prevent the collapse of the rupee, they have been forced to halt this measure. As a result, the rupee continues to deteriorate. It will reach 150 by the end of this year. Whether we like it or not, the biggest investor in the world is China. China has 40% of the world's savings. The Port City project, which would have generated hundreds of thousands of jobs and which would have been the largest of its kind in Asia, was halted. Even now it has been stopped. The construction of the Lotus Tower has also been halted. When this happened, they withdrew all the money they invested in treasury bills and bonds. When that money was withdrawn, the reserves fell and the rupee depreciated against the dollar. This is how it happens. We control the value of the dollar against the rupee by releasing our foreign reserves into the market. This had a serious harmful impact on our export earnings and our foreign reserves too. 80% of our reserves are comprised of foreign loans and foreign grants. When you use funds that have been obtained as loans to control the currency value, you will face a major economic crisis. Over the recent past, the value of the rupee against the dollar was not the real value. By floating the currency, we are facing this crisis. It is true that many inconveniences will have to be faced as a result, but the truth is that it must be done. Therefore, I believe that anyone with an understanding of economics will understand our actions.
In spite of clarifications from the government, the opposition continues to raise questions over the manner in which funds have been allocated for the education sector through the Budget 2016. In Parliament today, the Deputy Speaker rejected Opposition MP Bandula Gunawardana's motion to take up the manner in which funds have been allocated for the education sector through the budget. MP Gunawardana proposed that the matter be taken up in the adjournment motion debate.
It is the chief duty and responsibility of the Finance Minister to ensure that the budget that is presented to the Supreme House as the Appropriations Bill comprises of the truth with true figures and detailed transparent data. However, Honourable Ravi Karunanayake has presented a budget document to this chamber which leads Parliament and the public astray. As per the request of the Honourable Leader of the House, it is ordered that the word fraudulent be struck from the record. It was rejected under 17/1. We can read it to him.
If it is 17/1, we must be informed of it.
Honourable Leader of the House, when the Speaker has rejected it, the MP can be granted permission later to make submissions. The permission of the Leader of the House is not needed. The confidence of this chamber has been breached completely by the presentation of false information and data in the form of blowing up the expenditure head of the Education Ministry by listing over 121 billion rupees as recurrent expenditure through the 2016 budget. I propose to this respected chamber that this be corrected and presented to this House once again prior to the committee stage, and that an adjournment motion debate on this issue be granted as soon as possible so the opposition can make submissions to justify this. Honourable Bandula Gunawardana's request is rejected. It is being debated at present. The Finance Minister has made a clear statement in this chamber with regard to this matter.
Speaking at an event held in Hambantota today, Minister of Housing and Construction Sajid Premadasa said that the 500 rupee fertilizer subsidy will not be slashed.
There's a major talk among the farming community today over the fertilizer subsidy as to whether the 350 rupee fertilizer which was promised will be provided. If it is to be given, I plan on giving you a straightforward answer with all the facts and figures as to how this subsidy will be given and if there would be any kind of deduction to it. But it is with responsibility that I state that under this government of good governance, the 500 rupee fertilizer subsidy which you have been receiving thus far will continue with no slashings whatsoever. The construction of an office complex for the Kirinda Oya project commenced today under the auspices of Minister Sajid Premadasa. The complex is being constructed at an estimated cost of 200 million rupees.
Also in news related to the budget, Ranjit Siyambalapitiya, the Minister of Power and Renewable Energy, made a special announcement today at an event held at the ministry.
The new office of the Deputy Minister of Power and Renewable Energy was opened today. People ask what will happen to their electricity bills when the newly introduced nation-building tax of 4%. We wish to make something clear. This 4% will not be added to the consumer's electricity bill.
Up next is Action TV.
Addressing the gathering while assuming duties on the 23rd of this month, the 5th chairman of the Consumer Affairs Authority noted that only efficient persons who are free of fraud and corruption would be able to work with him. By this time, 18 days had passed since the suspension of a trade union leader who raised his voice over what is said to be the ugliest incident in the authority's 12-year history. This official, the secretary of the authority's Investigative Officers Association and the first investigative officer to be recruited by the authority upon its founding, was suspended over a statement he made to Newsfirst on the 24th of October. In his statement, this official, in his capacity as a union leader, points out that it was wrong for 6 officials at the authority, including the Director General, to travel overseas at the same time during the presidential election, and demands an investigation on the grounds that the authority's integrity has been compromised when considering the manner in which the trip had been funded. By this time, an organization established to protect consumer rights had lodged a complaint with the Commission to investigate allegations of bribery or corruption. The complaint reads that the trip in question was funded by an importer of food items. Prior to this trip, the Consumer Affairs Authority had presented to court a stock of sweetened drinks that had been seized from this importer. The letter notifying this trade union activist of his interdiction was issued by the Human Resources Manager of the authority, who participated in this overseas trip and who incidentally does not have the power to suspend officials. The new chairman of the Consumer Affairs Authority has annulled this suspension and has reinstated this investigative officer in his position, highlighting the fact that he requires persons who stand against fraud and corruption. The chairman's decision challenges this letter, which Action TV brought to light on the 9th of this month. This letter, which proved to be a basis for the suspension in question, was issued to all agencies and divisions under the Ministry of Industry and Commerce. This letter, which instructs all employees of institutions under the ministry to personally submit to the minister any matters that they are taking to the media, has been signed by the Secretary of the Ministry of Industry and Commerce. The Secretary of the Ministry of Industry and Commerce, who holds his position under a government that has explicitly voiced its commitment to the freedom of information, need not hesitate to immediately withdraw this letter. At the same time, it is also the Secretary's responsibility to launch a comprehensive inquiry into the aforementioned overseas trip.
Former Minister Tissa Attanayaka says that he is ready to re-enter active politics.
Majority of them, including religious leaders of the Mahasangha and the general populace, have requested that I re-enter active politics to build a kind of politics which will work towards the betterment of the party as well as the country. Therefore, since we have been quiet for months on end, I have decided to break the silence and venture into active politics soon. But I will not be quick to let you in on what path I have decided to take. We have many views on that, but I hope to reach a decision after inquiring from others as to what course of action needs to be taken. Former Minister Sattanayake made this statement to the media following a religious program which was held to commemorate the 94th birth anniversary of the chief prelate of the Ramanya sect, the most venerable Napane Premasiri Thero.
The Socialist People's Front convened a media briefing in Colombo today.
Ranil Wickramasinghe has taken a needle to the pair of denim trousers sewn by J.R. Jayawardena. He has gone beyond the open economy concept and has presented the financial plans through this budget to drag this country back to colonialism and make it a colony of Western forces.
A body was found floating on the Beira Lake in Fort Colombo this morning. The body was that of a man who has been reported missing since the 27th of this month. The police say that the victim was a building contractor and an electrician who has been identified as 54-year-old G.A. Chandrasena, alias Gampola Ayya, a father of 3. The police added that he was living in rented premises on Kaiser Street in Colombo.
Commuters who travel on the footboards of train carriages will face strict legal action from tomorrow. But did this measure address the issue at hand? News First made inquiries.
For people in our country, travelling on the footboards or train carriages is common. In order to get to work on time in the morning and to get home as soon as possible in the evening, many people risk their lives by travelling on the footboards. But from tomorrow, if you travel on the footboards, you will be taken before the law. Although travelling on the footboards of train carriages is an offence under the Railways Ordinance, as a result of there being insufficient trains to meet the demand of commuters, this law has not been enforced in the past. However, considering the rising number of accidents, the Railways Department notes that this law will be enforced from tomorrow. If you look back over the past 5 years, many people have been injured and have even lost their lives. We are hoping to give them a warning when they travel on footboards the first time, and if this fails, the Sri Lanka Railways Department, with the assistance of the police, will bring offenders before the law.
කෝච්චිය පරක් කරගෙන ඉඳලා මේ විදිහට පාපෝරු වෙර මේ පාපෝරු වෙන එක නවත්තන්න හම්බෙන්නේ නැහැ. නතර කරන්න ඉතින් ඒ වැඩිපුර පහසුකම් දෙන්න ඕනේ.
ගොඩක් ට්‍රේන්ස් දාන්න වෙනවා ෂෙඩියුල් ටයිම්ස් වලට ට්‍රේන්ස් යවන්න වෙනවා. ෆුට්බෝල් වෙන එක ආසාවට නෙමෙයි යන්නේ. මේ මිනිසුන්ට යන්න විදියක් නැති වුණා නම් යන්නේ. 10ක් විතර දාන්න කියන්නේ මේ කෝච්චි දාන්න අපි මේ ආසාවට යනවා නෙවෙයි. එහෙම නැතු හතපාර වරන්නේ නැහැ ඔක.
This will be enforced on the long distance services first and then the office trains. Considering the congestion on the office trains and other shortcomings, we will not be enforcing it on these trains at first. We hope to enforce this on the office trains as well once we increase the number of carriages and provide other facilities.
And that's a wrap of Primetime News tonight. I'm Jitendra Gunasena.
And I'm Nadim Majid. Good night and good luck.